Good evening on this Sunday night, and we come to you from Havana, Cuba this evening. We are here to witness the end of an era after the death of the Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. He ruled this island nation for a half century, supported violent revolution across the globe, and nursed his resistance to the United States right until the very end. Here in Havana, a somber mood tonight, this usually lively city, eerily quiet, in mourning. But in Miami this evening, a much different picture. Celebrations in the streets for Cuban families with loved ones who fled Castro's brutal regime. We have visited Havana several times as the Cold War between Cuba and the U.S. began to thaw in recent years, traveling here just this year with President Obama. But tonight, the people of both nations, as you will hear right here this evening, are now wondering what happens now. Tonight, all across Havana, we notice the flags at half-staff, the Cubans honoring their longtime leader. And on the streets of the capital, we see the famous vintage cars. But there is something missing here, the music. The Cuban people mourning Fidel Castro, who defied 10 U.S. presidents for half a century.
So, David,
we meet this man named Roy, proud of his 56 Chevy, and even more proud of his leader. ¿Qué piensas sobre un Cuba sin Castro? He tells us he's already been gone for a long time, that the future now depends on our relationships with other countries, including the U.S.
The road to Havana paved with glory for rebel chieftain Fidel Castro.
Fidel Castro riding into Havana, coming into power at just 32 years old. He kept his grip on power here longer than any national leader other than Queen Elizabeth. Castro born into a wealthy family. They had their own sugarcane plantation. He loved baseball, he loved politics, and he would love power.
Is representative democracy and social justice.
Castro took power on New Year's Day 1959, promising democracy, but soon throwing opponents in jail. There were executions, silencing newspapers, and taking over all U.S. businesses here, signing a pact with the Soviet Union. The U.S. would respond with sanctions, President Kennedy approving the invasion Cuban exiles entering at the Bay of Pigs. It failed. Castro won. Our Barbara Walters later crossing through the Bay of Pigs with Castro.
Do you feel funny crossing the Bay of Pigs with an American?
With friends America. With friend America.
American friends, yes.
Friendship relation.
It's a friendly relation. Well, it's a very...
You didn't come here to invade the country.
No, we did not come here to invade.
You came to work and to know Cuba.
America would find itself on the brink of nuclear war in 1962. Discovering Castro had let the Soviets put nuclear missiles in Cuba.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
The Soviets would remove the missiles, but America would deepen the sanctions.
The Monte Carlo of the Americas.
The nightclubs, the casinos, so popular with American tourists, were shuttered. Decades later, 11 million people live here in Cuba, making just $20 a month. By some estimates, just 5% have internet access in their homes. We have seen it in our reporting here. The grocery store shelves far from what you see in the U.S. Sugar plentiful here, but most of the powdered milk, for instance, from New Zealand. She pulls tomato juice from the shelf.
This is tomato juice from Spain.
But just this year, President Obama, the first U.S. president to visit Cuba since Calvin Coolidge, those old cars in the shadow of Air Force One. He would come here after moving to restore diplomatic relations, and our exclusive interview with the president during his visit.
Mr. President, we're meeting Cuba.
How about that?
I asked if you'd be visiting Cuba before the end of your presidency, and you said, let's see how things evolve.
Right.
So why now?
The time is right. Obviously, our intention has always been to get a ball rolling, knowing that change wasn't going to happen overnight.
The president this year saying there are still significant differences around human rights and individual liberties. But we met two 15-year-olds here today, and we asked them, are they looking forward to the possibility of new freedoms here?
¿Le gustaría más libertades para la gente?
They tell us they are happy the way they are.
A mass gathering is expected right here in the next 24 hours to honor Fidel Castro. This is what's called the Plaza of the Revolution. And the Cuban people will be allowed to come here and sign a solemn oath saying that they still believe in the concept of the revolution. This is where Fidel Castro would famously address the Cuban people for hours.
And on the streets here, we notice something else. The American tourists. There are now more of them here than there have been in decades. This group from California.
What do you hope now for the Cuban people?
I hope to see them have a better life, be open, more open and more happy and experience more and be able to travel outside of the Cuba and see other people and see how other people live and enjoy life a little bit more, right?
So you're all from Texas?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
Houston.
Houston.
And this group here from Rice University in Texas. They're here to watch baseball, the Americans against the Cubans. They got in some baseball, but the rest of the games have been canceled. They tell me they understand why.
What are your hopes for the Cuban people now?
I hope that we can continue to have good relations with Cuba, because I think that's what the people have indicated to us that they want.